Good morning, children. Today we will start a new chapter, Morphology of Flowering Plants, under the Unit 2, Structural Organization in Plants and Animals. This year, the syllabus has been reduced by the CBSE due to corona outbreak. Only the inflorescence and some families like Fabaceae, Liliaceae, etc. are included. So without any further ado, let's get started. First, morphology. What does it mean? Logos means study. Morphos means form. Then what is morphology? Morphology is the branch of biology, especially the botany, which deals with the study of external features, forms, and the relative positions of the different parts of the plant, not internal. So the morphology of the flowering plants, that is angiosperm, we are talking about, that external features of the root, stem, leaf, flowers, fruits, all are included in this branch of biology. That is the external features of all the parts of the plant. The serration, the color, the marking, everything, the size, whether hairs are present or not, that is the external features which we can observe from outside. Root system, shoot system, this year we will not study directly, we will study flower, right? Though we have idea that is root is responsible for anchorage and shoot system bears leaves, flowers, fruits, and it is responsible for the photosynthesis and also the reproduction, that is fruit. Okay, that is the canopy. It, in case of higher plants, we find a big canopy. So we are directly entering into the flower. What is flower? Flower is the reproductive part of the plant. So it helps the existence of the plant on earth. What is it? Actually, it is a modified shoot where the shoot apical meristem changes into floral meristem. Here, the internodes do not elongate and axis gets highly condensed, compressed, and the different floral appendages are produced laterally from the nodes instead of leaves. So that means here uh, the axis is highly compressed, so the internodal regions are not observed. It is highly compressed. It forms a thalamus receptacle like structure where all the nodes are almost in one level, and from each node, instead of leaf, floral appendages develop. So flower is a modified shoot where the shoot apical meristem changes into floral meristem, and here the internodes do not elongate and the axis gets highly condensed, and different kinds of floral appendages develop laterally from the nodes instead of leaves. It is the definition of flower. So these are the floral appendages, that is calyx, corolla, androecium, gynoecium. These are the floral appendages which develop from the node, and the axis is so compressed that it looks like a receptacle, right? Inflorescence. When a shoot tip transforms into a flower, single flower, then it forms a solitary flower. But sometimes we find on the axis, many flowers develop. So the arrangement of the flowers on the floral axis is called the inflorescence. On the basis of their structure and the development, the inflorescence are of two types, racemose and the cymose. One by one we will discuss. So inflorescence is the arrangement of flowers on the floral axis. Many flowers together arranged on the axis in a definite manner, and it constitutes the inflorescence. Now, racemose type of inflorescence. Racemose, which let the main axis continue to grow. It is very important. Continue to grow, and the flowers are borne laterally in acropetal succession. What does it mean? Continue to grow. So here the meristematic bud is present and it continues to grow. Okay, and the flowers develop laterally in acropetal succession, that is from base to top. The bigger one, the first develops at the base, then the second one, then the third one, then the fourth one. It is called acropetal succession from bottom to top, right? So indefinite growth, it is indefinite, it shows indefinite growth. So the young flowers are present at the tip and the old flowers are at the base. The first flowers which develop, that develops at the base, right? Now cymose. In cymose type, main axis terminates into a flower. Growth is limited and the flowers are borne in basipetal order. It is very important. So here the terminal axis, the first flower develops at the terminal axis, that is the apical floral bud first converts into a flower, and then the flowers develop basipetally, that is from top to bottom. So it is the matured one, the first formed flower, and this is the younger flower. So if you see this diagram, it will become clear that it is the first formed flower, and then in basipetal order, that is top to bottom, the flowers develop. So these flowers are the younger one. So as first we find that the apical floral bud has converted into flower, so here the growth is limited, right? Racemose and cymose, in a nutshell, what's the difference? In racemose, main axis continues to grow. Main axis here continues to grow. In cymose, however, main axis terminates in a flower having limited growth, right? Flowers are borne laterally in an acropetal succession. In case of racemose, in an acropetal succession. That is the old flower at the base, young flower at the tip. And in case of cymose, flowers are borne in basipetal succession. What does it mean? That is the old flowers at the tip and the young flowers towards the bottom. That is called the basipetal succession, right? Here the growth is not limited, and in case of cymose, growth is limited. Examples: racemose, reddish mustard; cymose, bougainvillea, jasmine, etc. Now the structure of the flower. Flowers are the reproductive part of the plants, and the flower arises in the axils of the leaf-like structure, which is called bract. Flowers with bract is called bracteate flowers, and if there is no bract in the axil from where the flowers develop, then that type of flowers are considered as ebracteate flowers. The terminal part of the axis of the flower is the receptacle or the thalamus. So actually in the flower, what we find, that is the long stalk-like structure which is called pedicel, and then the cup-like structure, receptacle or the thalamus, and on which the floral appendages develop. So mainly three parts: pedicel, then receptacle, and then the floral appendages, right? The receptacle or the thalamus is nothing but the compressed axis, floral axis, which contains four different holes: calyx, corolla, androecium, and the gynoecium. Calyx is the outermost hole, which consists of sepals. Corolla composed of petals, that is the second hole. Androecium, that is the third hole. It is the male reproductive part of the plant, composed of stamens. And then the gynoecium, the innermost hole, which consists of composed of carpels or the pistil, that is the female reproductive hole. Here, that and calyx and corolla, that is the outermost hole, which is green in color, and the corolla, which may be colorful, these two are the accessory hole, okay, that helps in protection, pollination, because these petals are fragrant or sometimes very bright in color, so they attract the insects, so it helps in pollination. But the androecium and the gynoecium, they are the essential part because they are directly involved in reproduction. So androecium and gynoecium, they are the essential whole, and calyx and corolla, they are the accessory whole. Okay. Bisexual flower. If the flower contains both androecium, gynoecium, then it is called bisexual flower because both the male and female reproductive holes are present. For example, China rose. Unisexual flower, only stamen, that is the androecium or the gynoecium consisting of carpel, is present. Only stamen, if only stamens are present, then it is called the male flower, and if only the carpels are present, it is called the female flower. For example, cucurbita, right? So this diagram represents the unisexual flower, and it represents bisexual flower, both male and female reproductive whole, androecium consisting of stamen and the gynoecium consisting of carpels or the pistils are present, right? Now, the types of flower on the basis of symmetry. Mainly two types are there, actinomorphic and the zygomorphic. First, actinomorphic. What is this? Actinomorphic means the radial symmetry. When the flowers can be divided into two equal radial halves in any radii passing through the center, the symmetry of the flower is called actinomorphic or the radial symmetry. It can be, the flower can be divided into two equal halves. This is the, if the cutting plane is this one, then these two will be the equal, and if the cutting plane is this one, then this part and this part will also be equal, and if the cutting plane is this one, then also this part and this part will be equal. That is the radial symmetry. That is, the flower can be divided into two equal radial halves in any radii passing through the center, any radii passing through the center, right? Mustard, datura, chili. So passing through the any radii passing through the center, it will be divided into two equal halves. Okay. Zygomorphic, when the flower can be divided only into two similar parts in one vertical plane, then it is considered as zygomorphic. Here you see, only if the plane passes through this direction, then two equal halves are produced. If it is cut in this way, then only two equal halves are produced. Okay. But if the cutting plane passes through this direction, these two half will not be equal. So in case of zygomorphic flower, the flower can be divided into two similar parts only in one vertical plane, right? Example, pea, gulmohar, cassia, etc. Flower can be divided into different types on the basis of the floral appendages. If the floral appendages are multiple of 3, either 3 or multiple of 3, 6, then they are called trimerous flower. If the floral appendages are 4, this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, or the multiple of 4, then it is called tetramerous flower. Can you give one example of tetramerous flower? Mustard. Pentamerous flower, that is the floral appendages are 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or the multiple of 5, China rose, that is the pentamerous flower. And flowers with bracts called bracteate, and flowers without bract is called ebracteate. In case of bougainvillea, the actual flower is this, the smaller one, and the red bright color structure that we find, we think it is a part of the flower. It is actually the bract in case of bougainvillea, right? On the basis of the position of the ovary, flower can be divided into different types on the basis of the position of the ovary with respect to other floral parts on thalamus. Flower are of following types, mainly 3 types. What are that? First one is the hypogynous flower. Ovary occupies the highest position. Here the ovary occupies the highest position. Therefore, the ovary is superior. Ovary is superior, and the other floral holes like androecium, calyx, corolla, they are present below the ovary. Okay, ovary superior, highest position, and other holes are below the ovary. So this type of flower is called hypogynous flower. Example, mustard, brinjal, China rose. So ovary is the highest position, superior. Now the next one is the perigynous flower. If the gynoecium is situated at the center and the other parts are on the rim at same height, then it is called perigynous. That is almost at the periphery. The ovary is present at the center and the other holes are present almost at the periphery. Then in that case, it is called perigynous, right? Almost at the same rim, at the same height. That is perigynous. Now the epigynous. Here the margin of the thalamus grows to completely cover the ovary. Actually here the ovary is inferior. Ovary, here you see, ovary is inside. Ovary is inside and it is completely, thalamus completely covers the ovary, and above the ovary the other holes are present. That is the calyx, corolla, gynoecium, other holes are present above the ovary. So ovary is inferior. This type of flower is called epigynous flower. Petals, sepal and stamens are attached at the top of the ovary. So it is clear. So epigynous, hypogynous and perigynous types of flowers we have learned on the basis of the position of the ovary in relation to the other floral parts on the thallus, right? We have learned hypogynous. Here ovary is superior, perigynous half inferior or the half superior, and in case of epigynous ovary is inferior. In case of epigynous, the other holes are above the gynoecium. In case of hypogynous, other holes are below the gynoecium, and in case of perigynous, other holes are around the gynoecium towards the periphery. Example you have to remember: hypogynous brinjal, perigynous pea, rose and sunflower. It is epigynous, ovary inferior. These two are the examples of perigynous, that is towards at the same height at the around the gynoecium, and here ovary is superior, that means hypogynous. Now one by one we are going to start to study the different parts of the flower. Calyx. Calyx is the outermost hole of the flower and it is green in color. Individual segment is called sepal. This sepal may be united or it may be free. If the sepals are united, then it is called gamosepalous. If the sepals are free, this diagram represents the gamosepalous flower and this represents polysepalous flower. Here the sepals are free and here the sepals are united. It is green and leafy and it protects the flower bud. It is the function. So calyx consists of sepals, right? Now calyx. Calyx is the second hole. In most of the cases it is brightly colored and it attracts insects. In some flowers it is responsible for spreading the sweet good fragrance and it helps in pollination. And when the corolla, individual segment of this corolla is called petal. Individual segment is called petal. If the petals are free, then it is called polypetalous. Here in this diagram you see that is the petals are free, not attached with one another. That is the polypetalous. And if the petals are attached, like example datura, that is the petals are attached, united, then this type of corolla is called gamopetalous, right? And main function is pollination and definitely along with that protection of the inner hole, androecium and the gynoecium. In some flowers we cannot differentiate sepal and petal. They are not distinguishable. Collectively they are called perianth and individual segment is called tepal. Okay, for example tuberose. Sometimes the tepals are little bit greenish in color, then it is called sepaloid perianth, and sometimes we find that is the tepals are colorful, though cannot be distinguished proper into sepal and petal, but little bit colorful, then it is called petaloid perianth. So perianth may be sepaloid or petaloid and individual segment is called the tepal, and here the sepals and petals are not distinguishable, right? Now aestivation. Aestivation is very important. What is aestivation? What does it mean? The mode of arrangement of the sepals and petals in the floral bud with respect to the other members of the same whole is called aestivation. That is the arrangement of the sepals and petals in the floral bud. The main types we will study. First one is the valvate type. Here the holes of the sepals and petals may touch each other, may not touch each other, but they do not overlap. Here you see that is the valvate. This diagram represents valvate aestivation where the sepals or the petals are placed side by side. They may touch each other, they may not touch, but they do not overlap. They do not overlap. Okay, that is the valvate. Example, calotropis. This one. Now the twisted. Here the sepals or the petals partially overlap each other. This margin is overlapped by this one. This margin is overlapped by this one in a twisted manner. That is, this side is overlapped by this one. This side is responsible for overlapping this one. And this margin is overlapped by this one and it is responsible for overlapping this one. So the margins are overlapping. Okay, this type of aestivation is known as twisted. One overlaps the other. This one overlaps the other. The margin, one margin gets overlapped by the other. Clear? It is overlapped by this one. It is overlapped by this one. So in this way, that is twisted. China rose. Imbricate. Margin overlap each other but not in particular fashion. It is very important. Gulmohor. Here you see this sepal or petal that is overlapped by these two. And here one is inside and one is outside. Here also two are outside. Here two are outside. Here one inside, one outside. Here one inside, one outside. One inside, one outside. And here totally two are inside. And here it is totally two are outside. So when the margins overlap each other but not in a particular fashion, then in that case the term which we use to explain that type of aestivation, that is the imbricate, right? Now the vexillary or the papilionaceous. Example, Oporagita, Clerosia, P, right? P and bean flowers, we find 5 petals. Out of that, one is the biggest one, which is known as the standard, that is the biggest one, standard, which overlaps the two lateral petals. These two are the wings, which overlaps the two lateral petals, that two wings. And these two wings in turn overlap to smallest anterior petal, which is called the keel. Okay, so these two are the keel. It is the standard, these are the wings. So this type of aestivation is known as vexillary or the papilionaceous. Aestivation is very important. Now the androecium. Androecium is the male reproductive whole of the flower. It consists of stamens. It may contain one stamen, it may contain more than one stamen. And each stamen consists of filament and anther. This is the filament and this is the anther. Okay. And pollen grains are produced within the pollen sacs. These pollen grains are produced within the pollen sacs. This, in each lobe, 2 pollen sacs are present and there are 2 lobes. This is one lobe. It is another lobe. And in each lobe, 2 pollen sacs are present. Okay. Total 4 pollen sacs. And in each pollen sac, pollen grains are present. That is the male reproductive gamete. And sterile stamens, sometimes the stamens are sterile and becomes colorful and it helps in attraction of the insects. In that case, they are considered as the staminode, that is the sterile stamen, not responsible for the production of the male gametes or the anther, pollen grains, right? Androecium, the stamens sometimes we find that attached to the petal. If the stamens are attached to the petal, then it is called epipetalous. This terminology you have to remember. Epipetalous, that is the petals are attached to the, stamens are attached to the petal. Here you see stamens are attached to the petal. Example, brinjal, right? Polyandrous, many stamens and all stamens free from each other, then it is called polyandrous. Monadelphous, that is many stamens and they are united to form one bundle. Here you see all are united. Diadelphous, that is united into 2 bundles, we find in Clerosia, P, that is it is in one bundle, it is another 9 plus. Here actually in Clerosia we find 9 plus 1 arrangement. Okay, that is 9 are united and 1 is separate, so in 2 bundles. Polyadelphous, that is united but responsible for forming more than 1 bundle. Example, citrus, more than 1 bundles are formed. Okay, that is grouped, many stamens are grouped and many bundles are there. This is called the polyadelphous. So on the basis of the attachment, the stamens may be epipetalous, may be polyandrous, may be monadelphous, may be diadelphous, may be polyadelphous. This brings me to the end of this chapter, this video. I hope you have enjoyed the lesson. Be curious, be inquisitive and keep learning. In my next video, I will discuss gynoecium and the placentation. Till then,